Shalom to the elect of Israel, to the hopeful elect of Israel, we Hebrew Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians. Gotta give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shah, the Most High, the Heavenly Father. His Hebrew name is Yahweh. Not Yahweh, not Jehovah, not God, not Elohim, not Most High, not Lord, not Yah, not Jah, not Ahaya, not Allah. It's Yahweh. And his only begotten son name in Hebrew is Yahweh Shah. Not Yahshua, not Yeshua, not Jesus Christos, not Jesus Christ, not Serapis Christos, not Yeshua, not Yehoshua. It's Yahweh Shah. So we got to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Rekah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elder bishops and elders of great millstone who rule well, who teach well, who are the apostles and elders of all of Israel, whether accepted or not. In a sincere salutation to all the ark and pushing this truth and believing this truth throughout the four ends of the earth, the entire world, waking up the hopeful elect. And shalom to the Akwath who are listening and learning. If your sisters who are listening and learning, I'm Isaiah from GMS Atlanta Camp coming at you with another lesson in truth, facts, faith, and edification. Another daily edification, Lord willing to be edifying. So, I don't know what I'm going to title this lesson just yet, but the title of this video is Game Over. China and Russia, BRICS partnership is collapsing the U.S. economy. Fall of petrodollar. And the Lord told us this verse in the scriptures. So I got 3 clips I'm going to play, and I'm going to get a couple precepts. Lord willing to be edifying. But this is the fall of the revised Roman Empire. In every kingdom that were before, they all had a monetary system. They all had an economy. They had a so-called great infrastructure. And they all have failed. They all have fallen. Just as Babylon the Great, North America, is doing. So Lord willing to be edifying.
Can BRICS, with the addition of Saudi Arabia, de-dollarize the global financial system? This question will be at the forefront of today's video. The BRICS members have collectively attempted to disrupt the US dollar's dominant position in the current global reserve currency structure through promoting the reform of the IMF's SDR and supporting the renminbi's inclusion into the SDR basket. These initiatives are part of the BRICS' broader efforts to reform the existing multilateral international financial institutions. Chinese officials had expressed China's interest in restructuring the global reserves currency structure and advocated for giving the SDR a greater role several months before the first BRICS summit. In March 2009, the PBOC governor, Zhao Xiaoshuan, called for making the SDR into a super-sovereign reserve currency. Later, the United Nations echoed Zhao's idea and proposed establishing a new global reserve system based on the IMF's SDR. The UN proposal stated, the global imbalances which played an important role in this crisis can only be addressed if there is a better way of dealing with international economic risks facing countries than the current system of accumulating international reserves. To resolve this problem, a new global reserve system, what may be viewed as a greatly expanded SDR, with regular or cyclically adjusted emissions calibrated to the size of reserve accumulations, could contribute to global stability, economic strength, and global equity. Russia showed its support for this proposal within a week and stated that Russia and China have similar positions on the reform of the international financial system. In June 2009, days before the BRICS summit, President Dmitry Medvedev expressed Russia's dissatisfaction with the existing reserve currency structure and called upon the IMF to expand the SDR basket to include the renminbi, commodity currencies such as the ruble, and gold to create a supranatural reserve currency for international settlements. Russia raised this issue again during the first BRICS summit and revealed its plan to reduce the share of US Treasury bills in its USD 400 billion reserves. This sentiment resonated with China and Brazil's decision to invest USD 40 billion and USD 10 billion respectively in IMF bonds, with another USD 10 billion from India. In this context, the issue of reforming the global reserve currency structure has become an important issue for BRICS, and members have shown their collective commitment to diversifying their reserves away from being overly concentrated in US dollar assets. The 2011 BRICS summit highlighted BRICS members' shared interests in reforming the existing reserve currency structure. BRICS leaders declared that they support the reform and improvement of the international monetary system, with a broad-based international reserve currency system providing stability and certainty, and welcome the current discussion about the role of the SDR in the existing international monetary system, including the composition of SDR basket of currencies. During the 2013 BRICS Summit, BRICS members reiterated their commitment to reforming and diversifying the global monetary structure, using almost the same language that they used in 2011. BRICS members also jointly expressed their support for the inclusion of renminbi into the SDR basket.
I've been getting paid $1,000 a month, if not more, just from this app on my phone. And
in October 2016 in their Goa Declaration. BRICS' efforts to reform the existing system have thus far led to limited success. BRICS' combined voting rights at the World Bank and IMF and BRICS' total SDR quota are all below 15% of the total. These numbers are still maligned with BRICS' collective economic power, which represents close to a quarter of global GDP. This limited success indicates the mounting difficulty facing BRICS members to further advance their voice and representation in the existing global system. If reforming the system from inside becomes unlikely, BRICS may resort to gold-alone strategies. BRICS members are keen to promote the use of their national currencies in trade settlements, and they have discussed this issue at BRICS summits for nearly 2 decades. High-level agreements on trade de-dollarization, as expressed in BRICS joint statements, have materialized through bilateral agreements among the members. For example, in June 2009, China and Russia reached an agreement to move toward settling bilateral trade in local currencies. A few days later, China and Brazil also announced an initial understanding to gradually eliminate the US dollar in their bilateral trade, which was estimated to be US $40 billion at the time. During the 2013 BRICS Summit, India's Commerce and Industry Minister, Anand Sharma, discussed his proposal to settle bilateral payments in local currencies with his South African counterpart Rob Davies. In 2015, South Africa's Investec Bank and the China Export-Import Bank acted on this proposal and signed a strategic cooperation agreement, which included the use of renminbi as a settlement currency in trade. In June 2016, the PBOC added the South African rand, allowing for direct trading on the Chinese interbank market. To further promote the use of local currencies in bilateral trade, the BRICS members augmented their agreements through a series of bilateral currency swaps, especially between China and other BRICS members. In 2013, the new China-Brazil bilateral swap agreement allowed them to trade in local currencies in the equivalent of up to USD 30 billion per year, which accounted for half of the bilateral trade between the two countries in 2012. In 2014, Russia and China signed a 3-year currency swap deal worth RMB 150 billion. This was extended for another 3 years in 2017. In 2015, South Africa and China signed a 3-year bilateral swap agreement worth 57 billion rand. Apart from this 2015 agreement, BRICS bilateral currency swaps have mostly been in renminbi. This is unsurprising, given that renminbi is the most internationalized of all BRICS national currencies. BRICS' efforts towards de-dollarization in international trade have progressed, especially in bilateral trade. Between 2013 and 2019, the use of local currency in India-Russia bilateral trade increased from 6% to 30%. According to Andrei Denisov, the Russia ambassador to China, about 25% of bilateral trade between Russia and China was settled using local currencies in 2020, which was about a 9-fold growth over less than 7 years. In comparison, the use of local currencies in their bilateral trade was about 2 to 3% during 2013 and 2014. The use of renminbi in trade in South Africa grew 65% in 2016. The bilateral currency swaps also proved useful for circumventing US sanctions. Under stringent sanctions in 2014, the bilateral currency swap between Russia and Chinese central banks enabled Russia to circumvent Western isolation and fostered a de-dollarization dynamic between China and Russia. Between October 2015 and March 2016, Russia used these swap lines multiple times to support bilateral trade and direct investment between Russia and China. At the BRICS country level, Russia has achieved the greatest reduction in the use of the US dollar in its trade since 2013. Russia's trade de-dollarization hit a milestone by the fourth quarter of 2020 when the share of its exports sold in US dollars fell below 50% for the first time. However, the decline of the US dollar was not replaced by the ruble, but rather picked up by the euro. The share of euro used in Russia's export transactions increased to 36.1%, contrasting with a mere 8.7% in the first quarter of 2013. Bilateral trade de-dollarization within BRICS has progressed most rapidly in Russia-China trade. This has been catalyzed by the increasing use of local currencies in Russia's exports to China, especially after major Russian energy companies stopped using the US dollar in their energy exports. For example, in 2015, Gazprom Neft announced that it settled all of its oil exports to China in renminbi. The rise of the euro in Russia-China trade also accelerated in 2019, when Russia's top crude oil producer Rosneft switched all export contracts to euros from US dollars to protect itself from intensifying US sanctions. By the end of 2020, more than 83% of Russian exports to China were settled in euros. The euro has now replaced the US dollar and has become the primary vehicle currency in Russia-China trade. As their relations with the United States have worsened in recent years, Russia and China have moved closer to jointly de-dollarizing bilateral trade and promoting the use of local currencies in trade settlements. In 2018, President Putin announced that the Russian and Chinese sides confirmed their interest in using national currencies more actively in reciprocal payments. In 2019, following his meeting with President Xi, Putin confirmed that Russia and China intend to develop the practice of settlements in national currencies. Meanwhile, Russia and China signed a joint declaration announcing the elevation of their bilateral relationship to the level of comprehensive strategic partnership of coordination for a new era. This upgrade in their relationship enables China and Russia to ramp up their collective efforts to reduce dependence on the US dollar. Concurrent with this upgrade in bilateral relations, Russian Finance Minister Anton Siluanov and the PBOC Governor Yi Gang signed a treaty that agreed to use national currencies in bilateral trade and boost cross-currency settlements up to 50%. These developments suggest that Russia and China are moving closer to forming a de-dollarization hub as both of their relationships with the United States have deteriorated. What are your thoughts on BRICS? Comment down.
Everything goes up. If you have hyperinflation, I mean, look how high the Zimbabwe stock market went up in Zimbabwe dollars. But who cares about Zimbabwe dollars? And pretty soon, people might be saying, who cares about US dollars? It's pretty obvious that this is going to happen. The world is hemorrhaging right now from the dollar standard. The fact that the dollar has been so strong against the pound, against the euro, against the yen, that is exacerbating their problems.
In the title of this video is China is threatening to dump $1 trillion to crash the US economy.
We are exporting our inflation to the rest of the world, and now they're having to deal with it. The problem is we just print money. We have these massive trade deficits. We're importing all this stuff. We're sucking up the goods. You know who gets this? Vladimir Putin. Listen to some of his speeches. He understands this parasitic relationship that we have with the world, where we just print money and we buy stuff. We don't have to make the stuff. The rest of the world makes the stuff. We just create the inflation to pay for it. We are spreading misery all around the world, and we are living off the fruits of the rest of the world. And
That's the fiat currency, which is the Ponzi scheme, which is a Ponzi scheme. And that's why North America have this group called the Economic Hitmen. Okay, they created this fiat currency as a Ponzi scheme to keep all the other nations in debt.
the world is like, no, we don't want to do this anymore. There's going to be a revolution against this system, because the winner is the United States. The loser is everybody else. Now, you know, as an American, yeah, this was a good deal for us, but I know that it's not going to go on forever, because the rest of the world is not going to stand for it. And we've really pushed them in that direction recently by weaponizing the dollar. You know, the stuff that we're done recently, with sanctions on Russia. This is just accelerating that process. The Chinese talking about dumping dollars. They've got a lot of dollars to dump. They've got over $1 trillion. So does Japan. The yen is getting killed. Chinese RMB is going down. The only way these currencies can go up is if they start selling their dollars. They start selling their U.S. treasuries. And what does that do? That pushes the inflation back to America, because now the dollar starts to go. Interest rates start to go up. I mean, the world has been, propping us up. We've been exporting our inflation. They can send it back to us by intervening in these currency markets, but by not hoarding U.S. dollars.
Hold on. What Yahweh said, show me the money. Whose face on the money? Esau Edom, the so-called white man. Right? Now these devils, the scriptures say, because this is the seven-head beast, the seven-head, 10-horn beast that controls the planet, man. Okay, this is a system of the Edomites. Well, the Lord said that they was going to be diverse, man. That they was going to mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another. So most of these nations that's joined to North America, Babylon the Great, these EU and NATO nations is Edomites. Well, the other heathen nations joined too. But you see, it's a separation, man. Which is, these Edomites can't get along, man. That's why it's a separation. That's why the Lord say, a house divided should not stand, man. Because this is the seven-head, 10-horn beast system, man. Okay, and everybody, even though nations are cleaving to the Russians, which are also Edomites, which is prophecy in Ezekiel 38, but there's a separation, man. There's a separation. They cleave, they mingling, but they will not cleave. So here's the separation of EU, NATO, and Babylon the Great.
The world has been, propping us up. We've been exporting our inflation. They can send it back to us by intervening in these currency markets, but by not hoarding U.S. dollars, moving away from the U.S. dollar, moving out of U.S. treasuries. Now, the Chinese were making some noise about doing that. I don't know. I mean, I've always thought that if they were going to do it, they wouldn't telegraph it first. They would just do it. You would find out that they did it after the fact. You would see the collapsing dollar. You would see the collapsing bond market. They wouldn't be talking about what they're going to do, right? Why would you do that? If you were planning on making a big sale, you wouldn't alert everybody that you were going to do it, because then maybe you wouldn't get a good price. People would start front running what you had intended to do. You want to take the market by surprise, right? You don't want to telegraph what you're going to do. You hope nobody notices it, and you get to do it, without anybody figuring out. But of course, they're such a big player that if they really start to meaningfully move out of the dollar, people are going to figure it out. But you figure they want to get rid of as many dollars as they can before the word gets out that they're selling. The reason you have inflation, right? Governments create money, and you have
Shop Tire Kingdom's Holiday Head Start Tire event and get 4 select tires for just $2.99, and that includes
spending. You have too much demand. Well, and you don't have enough savings. How do you change that? Well, if interest rates are positive, if I can earn a real rate of return, I'll save my money instead of spending it. Am I going to be incentivized to save money? I mean, yes, losing 5% is not as bad as losing 8%, but who the hell wants to lose 5%? If I know I'm going to lose 5% on my savings, I ain't going to save. I'm still going to spend. And so if the government is not cutting back on my spending, I'm still spending everything and saving nothing, they're not going to bend that inflation curve. You've got to encourage savings. Where is savings right now? It's the lowest it's been since the 2008 financial crisis. Americans are spending everything. And in fact, what does the government want to do? Gas prices are up. Oh, we need to give people more money so they can buy those, so they can pay higher prices. No, people have to buy less gas. That's what they need to do. We can't just give them more money to keep buying it. Then the price will keep going up. So the government is not allowing the free market to do what needs to be done. We're a lot poorer because the government created all this inflation. We've got an enormous government that we've got to pay for. And how do we pay for all this government? Again, we don't get it for free. We're going to pay for it with a lower standard of living. Either we're going to have less money because the government takes our money, or we're going to have inflation because the government takes our purchasing power. That's it. There is no free lunch. Every time we get into a problem, the Fed covers up the problem with more monetary heroin. And then we have a bigger problem. And so we had a massive problem that erupted in 2008. And this one's going to be worse because we have a lot more debt now than we had then. That's why the problems weren't a crisis, because they hadn't developed to this degree. But now every problem is a crisis. That's why when they did QE the first time, they said it's a one-off event. We're never going to do it again. I knew in the beginning that was a lie. That once they did it, they were committed. They had checked us into a monetary roach motel. There was no way out. I said it from day one. I said it in 2008, and I was right. And I warned about hyperinflation, and people were laughing at me because it hadn't happened. It just hadn't happened yet. It's going to happen, and even if it's not hyperinflation, it's going to be massive. We've already got the worst inflation in 30 or 40 years, and in fact, if they measured it honestly, last year was really the worst inflation ever. It was worse than any year. When the dollar collapses and it's no longer the reserve currency, and we can no longer act as a parasite on the world, we can't suck up all the goods that the rest of the world produces. Now the rest of the world is going to have a lot more stuff, and they're going to be better off. Right? The world is not better off because they're holding a pile of our paper. They're worse off. We're better off because we get their stuff and they get our paper. Well, when they keep their stuff and we keep our paper, the world is better off and we're worse off. And if the world is better off, then you're better off investing in those countries that are going to benefit from the dollar's collapse. You don't want to have your assets here because Americans are going to be a lot poorer at the end of all this, because we are living an artificially high standard based on the fact that the dollar is the reserve currency. Well, this crisis is going to end that reign. I think gold is going to replace the dollar. I don't think it's going to be the euro or the yen or the RMB or some special drawing rights coming out of the SDR. Everybody's going back to gold. I mean, that's where everybody always goes back to gold, right? Nothing has changed. If the money creation slows down or reverses, everything implodes. So money supply is going to explode. There's no question in my mind that that is going to happen. It's already happened, and money supply is going to grow even more. In fact, since COVID started, I forget what 40% of the money that's ever been created has been created in just a couple of years. Well, when this next recession kicks into a higher gear, see, right now they're still pretending that it's not a recession because the unemployment rate officially is still low. Well, once the unemployment rate spikes up, they can't pretend anymore. But then the budget deficits are just going to explode from where they already are, which is a couple of trillion a year. And then, of course, the money supply has to follow, because how are they going to fund those deficits? They're going to create the money out of thin air to do it. Bitcoin and these other 20,000 fiat cryptocurrencies, that's all a sideshow. Yes, a lot of people got rich scamming people into this con, but a lot of people are also going to go broke. But at the end of the day, all that is doing is preparing the road for the real adoption of that technology when it's married to real money, not these worthless tokens. All the places that people got rich during the bubble, that's where they're all going to go broke when the air comes out. And even if the Fed turns on the printing presses, the air is still coming out in real terms, because they're not going to be able to pretend there's inflation anymore. It only worked so long as they can pretend inflation was under 2%. They can't pretend that inflation is never going back below 2%. I mean, it will eventually, but in the foreseeable future, in the lifetime of the typical investor right now, you're not going to see it. It's not going to.
Well, he say they going back to gold. Man, the Lord said that gold and silver is cankered, man. Okay? In Zephaniah, it tell you that they're gonna throw their gold and silver shall be cast into the streets, man. It's also in Isaiah. So we know that ain't gonna work neither.
The core staples of the past 40 years, and an anchor.
Now this video here is titled How Saudi Arabia and China Plan to Crush the U.S. Economy, No Petrodollar, De-Dollarizing, and the BRICS. De-dollarization and the BRICS.
One of the core staples of the past 40 years, and an anchor propping up the dollar's reserve status, was a global financial system based on the petrodollar. This was a world in which oil producers would sell their product to the U.S. and the rest of the world for dollars, which they would then recycle the proceeds of in dollar-denominated assets, and while investing in dollar-denominated markets, explicitly prop up the USD as the world reserve currency. All of this would support the standing of the U.S. as the world's undisputed financial superpower. Those days are coming to an end. Recent reports have noted that Saudi Arabia is in active talks with Beijing to price some of its oil sales to China in yuan, a move that could cripple not only the petrodollar's dominance of the global petroleum market, something which Sultan Patsar predicted in his last note, and mark another shift by the world's top crude exporter toward Asia, but also a move aimed squarely at the heart of the U.S. financial system, which has taken advantage of the dollar's reserve status by printing as many dollars as needed to fund government spending for the past decade. According to the report, the talks with China over yuan-priced oil contracts have been off and on for 6 years, but have accelerated this year as the Saudis have grown increasingly unhappy with decades-old U.S. security commitments to defend the kingdom. The Saudis are angry over the U.S.'s lack of support for their intervention in the Yemen civil war, and over the Biden administration's attempt to strike a deal with Iran over its nuclear program. Saudi officials have said they were shocked by the precipitous U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan last year. China buys more than 25% of the oil that Saudi Arabia exports, and if priced in yuan, those sales would boost the standing of China's currency, and set the Chinese currency on a path to becoming a global petro-yuan reserve currency. Many investors would admit a shift to a petro-yuan system would be a profound shift for Saudi Arabia to price even some of its roughly 6.2 million barrels a day of crude exports in anything other than dollars, as the majority of global oil sales, around 80%, are done in dollars. And the Saudis have traded oil exclusively in dollars since 1974. In a deal with the Nixon administration that included security guarantees for the kingdom, it appears that the Saudis no longer care much about U.S. security guarantees and instead are switching their allegiance to China. As a reminder...
See? Let's read this. This is Isaiah 13 and 17. It reads, Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. Their bows also shall dash the young men in pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eyes shall neither spare children. And that's how Esau did us. It tell you in the curse in Deuteronomy 28. It's also in Baruch that they ain't care about the young or the old of Israel. It reads, And Babylon the glory of kingdoms shall be, and Babylon the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency shall be as when power overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It shall neither be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation, neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherd make their foes there. So this is showing you now the Arabians are not they are showing that they are not pitching their tents here in Babylon anymore, man.
Back in March 2018, China introduced yuan-priced oil contracts as part of its efforts to make its currency tradable across the world, but they haven't made a dent in the dollar's dominance of the oil market, largely because the USD remained the currency of choice for oil exporters. But, as Patsar also noted recently, for China the use of dollars has become a hazard highlighted by US sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program and on Russia in response to its invasion of Ukraine. Today's historic transition...
Oh, Salakia. And what I just read in Isaiah 13 and 17, down to verse 20, say that Babylon going to be destroyed, right? Well, before Babylon get destroyed, the Arabians going to separate from this place. That was the point I wanted to make. Because as he said, the Arabians, it say, hold on, go back a little bit. Right here. It appears that the Saudis no longer care much about U.S. You see? So that's that verse I just read, man. So before Babylon the Great be destroyed, Saudi Arabia is going to separate from this place, man.
This historic transition is not exactly a surprise. China has been stepping up its courtship of the Saudi kingdom in recent years, helping Saudi Arabia build its own ballistic missiles, consulting on a nuclear program, and investing in Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's pet projects, such as Neom, a futuristic new city. Meanwhile, the Saudi relationship with the U.S. has deteriorated under President Biden, who said in his 2020 campaign that the kingdom should be a pariah for the killing of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. Prince Mohammed, who U.S. intelligence authorities say ordered Mr. Khashoggi's killing, refused to sit in on a call between Mr. Biden and the Saudi ruler, King Salman, last month. It also comes as the U.S. economic relationship with the Saudis is diminishing. The U.S. is now among the top oil producers in the world, a stark reversal from the 1980s when it imported 2 million barrels of Saudi crude a day. But those numbers have fallen to less than 500,000 barrels a day in December 2021. By contrast, China's oil imports have swelled over the last 3 decades. In line with its expanding economy, Saudi Arabia was China's top crude supplier in 2021, selling 1.76 million barrels a day, followed by Russia at 1.6 million barrels a day, according to data from China's General Administration of Customs. The dynamics have dramatically changed. The U.S. relationship with the Saudis has changed. China is the world's biggest crude importer, and they are offering many lucrative incentives to the kingdom, said a Saudi official familiar with the talks. China has been offering everything you could possibly imagine to the kingdom, the official said. In retrospect, We now know the reason why Mohammed bin Salman wasn't taking Biden's phone calls. Needless to say, the US is not happy with this historic transformation. A senior US official said that the idea of the Saudis selling oil to China in yuan was highly volatile and aggressive and not very likely. The official said the Saudis had floated the idea in the past when there was tension between Washington and Riyadh. It is, of course, possible that the Saudis could back off. Switching millions of barrels of oil trades from dollars to yuan every day could rattle the Saudi economy, which has a currency, the rial, pegged to the dollar. Prince Mohammed's aides have been warning him of unpredictable economic damage if he moves ahead with the plan hastily. Or perhaps Saudi Arabia is merely preparing for the day when the peg will be broken to sever the last major linkage to the US. Doing more sales in yuan would more closely connect Saudi Arabia to China's currency, which hasn't caught on with international investors because of the tight controls Beijing keeps on it. Contracting oil sales in a less stable currency could also undermine the Saudi government's fiscal outlook. The impact on the Saudi economy would likely depend on the number of oil sales involved and the price of oil. Some economists said moving away from dollar-denominated oil sales would diversify the kingdom's revenue base and could eventually lead it to repeg the rial to a basket of currencies, similar to Kuwait's dinar. If it is done now at a time of strong oil prices, it would not be seen negatively. It would be more seen as deepening ties with China, said Monica Malik, chief economist at Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank. Still, the Saudis plan to do most oil transactions in dollars, but the transition has begun, and the move could tempt other producers to price their Chinese exports in yuan as well. China's other big sources of oil are Russia, Angola, and Iraq. The oil market, and by extension the entire global commodities market, is the insurance policy of the status of the dollar as a reserve currency, said economist Gal Luft, co-director of the Washington-based Institute for the Analysis of Global Security, who co-wrote a book about de-dollarization. If that block is taken out of the wall will begin to collapse, and so the pieces of the endgame are falling into place. Russia starving the Western world of much-needed resources, sending commodity prices ever higher, while its silent partner China quietly picks up the monetary pieces and takes advantage of the Western scramble to secure resources at all costs, and approach all those other non-Western former petrodollar clients who are also rich in other resources to offer them a new product, the yuan, which Beijing is now actively and aggressively pushing to dethrone the dollar as a global reserve currency. Chinese experts comment on Saudi Arabia's interest in BRICS. According to a Beijing-based international relations expert who requested anonymity, the US intended Saudi Arabia to listen to its directives and satisfy its demands. But the unfolding of events clearly indicated that Washington had overplayed its hand. According to the analyst, the US is selfish in its dealings with Saudi Arabia, and the idea of joining BRICS shows Saudi Arabia's growing autonomy in its diplomacy with Washington. The expert further noted that joining BRICS will also protect Saudi Arabia's own energy interests in a substantive way, rather than being a card to be used by others. As stated by the Beijing-based expert, if Saudi Arabia joins BRICS, it would be a promotion to the Middle East countries to strengthen their ties with BRICS countries and weaken the intervention and influence of the US in the area. The oil for security framework between Saudi Arabia and the US needs to be adjusted in light of the evolving international situation, according to Li Xiaoxian, director of the China Institute for Arab Studies at Ningxia University, who spoke to the Global Times on Wednesday. The Middle East has a clearly elevated position in the world. Europe depends on it for energy. Russia takes notice to it, and China has strong links with it with the Belt and Road Initiative. But the Saudis do not feel equality and mutual respect in a US-led framework, Li claimed. What are your thoughts on the petro-yuan becoming a thing? Let me know down below.
You see? Hey, this is gonna happen, man. Let me go back to this.
My stuff. We don't.
Just want to get this still. See, this is the reason. Who face on the money? Caesars, man. You see, hey, the problem, the reason, the world monetary system, the reason for the failing of the world monetary system is because of this 7-head beast, man. Okay? This Edomite 7-head beast, man. But this is Obadiah 1:7. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread. What bread? How's the other nations eating the bread of America? Through the petrodollar. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. Now, when you read in Daniel's, this is Daniel's 2, about the fourth beast, right? It say, verse 43, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with miry clay. And the end all be all is, all nations are going to be destroyed, but there's going to be a separation between the Babylonian Edomites and the Russian Edomites, okay? And all the other Edomites that's joined to EU and NATO in North America, to the beast system. There's a separation, man. There's a division. And the Lord said it. Let's read it here. In Luke 11:17, Yahushua said, but he knowing their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and a house divided against a house falleth. This is Mark 3:24. And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan rise up against himself and be divided, he cannot stand but have an end. And we see there's a separation in the beast system, man. There's a separation. And it got to do with the petrodollar. So Babylon the Great had to be removed, man. Once Babylon the Great is removed, then these kingdoms think everything can go back to normal. No. The only way things will go back to normal, Yahushua got to come and destroy this place, man. The earth will not be back normal until Israel is back in rulership, man, under Yahushua and King David. This is Isaiah 19:2. But if Babylon the Great was removed, it still would be a problem, because you still got other Edomites in other parts of the earth, man. Okay, you got the Russian Edomites, the Turkey Edomites. Okay, you got the BRICS, England, right? So until Esau get removed out the earth, there's going to always be a problem. That's why he is the only nation that the Lord is going to do away with, because he is the problem. Isaiah 19:2, and I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. You see? So they got to be removed completely. It's the Lord was edifying. Got to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushua, Bahashem Rikat Kodash. The watch for tuning in. May Yahweh Shem Yahushua continue blessing your houses. Stay prayed up.